We're busy building out some hemp supply chains at the moment in the Congo. We're about to sign a deal to build a big medical cannabis facility in Uganda. And then we work across South Africa, catalyzing hemp projects. I have a full team, a full partner team on that particular consultancy. So it's not a one size fits all. As we know, this is a very multifaceted industry. So we brought in experts with different backgrounds so that we could provide the best service possible to our clients. And then we run a cannabis club.
Welcome, everyone, to our special series of the GCNC Worldview. I'm your host, Jill Reddish, co-founder of the Global Cannabis Network Collective, and I am excited to be joined by a very special co-host today for our People Power Leadership Series. So welcome, Stephanie Powell, the founder of Lane Recruitment. Hey, Stephanie.
Hi, Jill, and hi, Trenton. I'm so excited for this conversation. It's been a long time coming, and I'm just so excited to dive into this.
Yeah, so we are joined today by Trenton Birch, who is the CEO and founder of Cheeba Africa and the director of Friends of Hemp South Africa. And he also is a new advisory board member of the GCNC, and we're thrilled to be working with him. So Trenton, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah. Really appreciate the time difference that we're all working on. I just got back from Europe to Denver today, so I'm in Mountain Time Zone. Stephanie, I think you're still in Europe, in Portugal, is that right?
Yeah, so I'm on PST or West, whatever time zone you want to call it.
Yeah, and Trenton, thanks for joining us from South Africa today. We're really spanning the globe for this one.
Yeah, the cannabis market is a global industry, as we know.
Yeah, we've been saying that for years, and it's so exciting to see it really come to fruition. And there is so much happening on the African continent these days that, without further ado, Trenton, will you go ahead and tell us a little bit about, I said your titles and all of that, but tell us about the work that you do and the work that you're doing in Africa.
So it's quite diverse. Our main thrust is we are an education company. So under the Cheeba Africa group, we have Cheeba Cannabis and Hemp Academy. We've been running that for about 5 years, and we teach everything across the entire supply chain. So whether it's agriculture to security, marketing, packaging, testing, extraction, you name it. So we do stuff online, but what we have, which is quite unique, is a campus. So we actually have a physical campus space in Johannesburg where we do full-time courses, and we have, cultivation facilities, we have extraction facilities, we have a cannabis club on site. So our students get to experience, seed all the way through to sale. But we also teach with a lot of our curriculum what we call like our second curriculum, where we do mindfulness, we do yoga, meditation, we do futurism, we teach people permaculture. We believe that if you're trying to learn to be the best cannabis grower, just learning one plant doesn't make any sense. So permaculture is a big part of the curriculum and the philosophy around that. So yeah, we really love like contact learning. We are obviously online, and we do a lot of stuff online, but our first love is contact learning, getting people in classrooms, giving them the opportunity to network, to build out. I mean, we have a 12-week course where there are 35 lecturers. So that gets really busy, and you're basically building a network. So that's the one side. And then we have a consultancy where we consult across the sort of supply chains. We're busy building out some hemp supply chains at the moment in the Congo. We're about to sign a deal to build a big medical cannabis facility in Uganda. And then we work across South Africa, catalyzing hemp projects. I have a full team, a full partner team on that particular consultancy. So it's not a one size fits all. As we know, this is a very multifaceted industry. So we brought in experts with different backgrounds so that we could provide the best service possible to our clients. And then we run a cannabis club, which is called Cheeba Delicious, which is my fun time. I come from the music industry originally, so as much as I'm fully into like commercial agriculture and the industry, I'm also very interested in the culture of cannabis. I grew up with cannabis, was always part of the music industry. So Cheeba Delicious is like an Afrocentric cannabis club brand, which is where we get to play and have a bit of fun. So that's kind of the matrix, I guess. And there's obviously Friends of Hemp. So that's a sort of a non-profit organization just set up to try and capacitate and catalyze and lobby and move things forward, and sort of bring the industry together.
Oh, yeah, I feel like you can't be in this cannabis space without being multifaceted. And anyone only has to go look at your LinkedIn profile, Trenton, to see that that is definitely true.
And we also run a summit. I forgot to mention that, which is coming up soon. So
Yeah.
that's another thing we're doing. I think that our approach has always been, our philosophy is the rising tide lifts all boats. Okay. And we've run about 140, 150 webinars in the last 5, 6 years. And the whole philosophy is like the more we educate people, the more people get into this industry, the more it's going to move forward. So we will ultimately benefit. But we're very, very driven by unification, breaking down barriers between people. Obviously, I live in a complex country, where cannabis is quite racialized because of our history. So we're constantly working with cannabis to break down those racial barriers, to make sure that it's a plant that everybody can benefit from. And that's kind of our philosophy ultimately. We are purpose-driven entrepreneurs. We work damn hard, and we're very driven, and we're very passionate. But ultimately, we're driven by I often say to the international market, like, overseas people need cannabis to get high for recreational or responsible adult use. We keep trying to use to keep the sort of prohibitionists happy. And then for medicine, those are two reasons. In places like Africa and in South America, we need it for a third reason, which is to eat. We need our economies to be stimulated. We need job creation. We haven't recovered since COVID. So, the stakes are a lot higher for us. And in South Africa, as you're probably aware, we have a deep, deep legacy for cannabis. So it's not something new to us. And we just got to capitalize that opportunity and work it as hard as we can. That's kind of a bit of a scope of what we do.
Oh yeah, I know. It's something that any one of those things I feel like we could sit and chat about for hours and dive into. But um, thinking about your kind of just high level day to day, I mean, you must have a small team of folks that you're working with to help make sure everything just keeps moving forward and that you're not dropping the ball. That's got to be kind of a challenging management strategy to keep up with because as we all know, we talk about this all the time, cannabis and hemp, both very volatile, hard to predict what's going to happen. Tell us a little bit about how you approach that and how you work with your colleagues to help keep motivated and help keep the kind of the eye on the prize.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I remember I lived in London for 8, 9 years, and I remember when I arrived there, I had to have 3 different CVs because I worked in television production, I worked in live music, and I realized that when you're living in a developing economy, you become a jack of all trades to some degree. I mean, there's validity in keeping things nice and tight and specialization. I'm not against specialization, but you learn to be an entrepreneur in developing economies. So I guess that's given me the skill to juggle lots of balls. I was a project manager. Back in the day, I used to run large scale events, like massive events for hundreds and thousands of people. So I do have that skill to juggle things. It's not easy, and it really really depends on the team you have. I have three full-time partners, who bring huge amounts of energy and drive and support. The cannabis industry is not an easy industry. We all know that. It's been up and down. We have been pushing a big rock up a very big hill for many years. But the partners I have, have stood the test of time, and that's what gets you through things. You have shoulders to cry on, and high fives and hugs and whatever you need. So I think partners. I'm a partner guy. I'm not a solo guy. I've never worked on my own. I always have to have partners, so that's the key. And then just being organized. You've got to be organized. You've got to have your stuff together and have systems in place and structure. But it's challenging. It's always challenging. I mean, people management is always a challenge. But I love people. I love for all the good and bad of people, and when you manage them, that's it. It keeps me stimulated to deal with different characters.
Yeah, it sounds like you really were able to pull on your past experience. It's really interesting because there's a lot of people in our industry who come from the music industry. It's a pattern that I see time and hear from other candidates and other companies I work for, like time and time again. Why do you think, you did mention the culture component, but why do you think people from the music industry thrive so well in the cannabis space? Like, where is that alignment, or where does that sort of cross over?
So that's such a great question, and I have a perfect answer. So When I sort of decided to step away from the music industry, because I've done anything from management. I'm an artist myself. I've played on stages. I've done the whole thing, and I remember the thing I loved about the music industry was the diversity, the racial diversity, the cultural diversity. That for me was always such an amazing part, and what drew me to it. And when I went full time into cannabis, I found exactly the same thing. I can be sitting in a boardroom in a suit with a bunch of venture capitalists, or I can be sitting in a shack in a township with a bunch of rustas, and it really spanned so many different cultures and different, genres. It would be genres in music, whereas in cannabis, there's just so many facets to it. So I think that for me, that's something, and you can really carve out something for you in the industry. I often say to my kids, that I want them to take over my business, and I say to them, you know what, you don't have to be into cannabis. But you could do design for this. You could do supply chain management. You could do agriculture. You could become a pharmacist. You become a doctor. There's so many different areas that you could come into this space and work if you want to. And I think that's for me what attracted me to the industry is just the dynamism and the different kinds of people, and it is a bit wild, it's rough and ready at times, and the music industry is also a bit crazy, and so yeah, it's an exciting space, and it's super purpose driven. I remind my team all the time, every day when they wake up and they come into the campus or they're online doing their work, they are changing the world, every single moment. And I think that is also, being in a purpose-driven industry is just, you cannot beat it. Why would you live a life? And I know people do this, and no disrespect to anybody who does this, but I don't want to die on my deathbed and know that I did 50 years of something I didn't want to do, and that for me is, I've always been like that, and I've been blessed to have found things that have given me that stimulation and happiness.
That's amazing. And not only now do you bring that light, but you're training the next generation of leaders. You're training the next generation of individuals who will be a part of this industry in so many ways. And so when you're working with a lot of these sort of young, and they're not always young, because you did explain that you had somebody in your recent program who was 75, but when you're working young in their cannabis careers is the language I will use. But when you're working with people who are wanting to learn and want to be a part of it, what are you hearing from them in terms of their hopes, their dreams? Like, what are they looking for in their future, and why are they choosing cannabis?
I mean, it's very funny because I often describe the music industry and cannabis in this way. So when you want to be in the music industry, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to be on the stage. You want to be on the mic. Same with the films. You want to be the actor. So most people think that to be in the cannabis industry, they have to be a cultivator. So we get a lot of people coming in saying they want to cultivate cannabis, and by the time they leave, they're like, I'm going to do something else in the industry because I realize there's a whole lot of stuff that I can do. I mean, there's a lot of passion in this industry. There's a lot of people really passionate about weed, and whether it's just smoking to get high and it makes you feel good, to having a family member that's been healed from it, to your eco warriors who can see the value in commercializing hemp. It really is an exciting space to be in. It ties into the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and I think you mentioned earlier one of the things we do is we are very bullish about the way we run our campus. Like, for example, we don't use any chemical products on our campus. Every now and then something creeps in and I throw my toys and everyone's like, okay, sorry, because we're teaching people about clean living, about we talk about alcohol on a regular basis, which is a massive issue in my country. I do a particular lecture on passion, purpose, and how you can unpack and live a healthy life. I go into food, I go into the toxins we have in food. So what we're trying to do is be the pebble, and train people that understand cannabis, but understand there's a higher purpose to this position that they're trying to achieve, and that they can instigate change. So we're very holistic in the way we approach things, and I think that's I guess not everyone resonates with that, but that's what we're trying to do, I guess. I hope that answers your question. Sorry.
I mean, I'm hearing in that, Trenton, I'm thinking of the recent charge that you were leading with the South African legislature, who had recently banned hemp you're going to have to tell us more about the whole story, but I know you pulled together a coalition or were a very big part of it to really lobby them and get that change. So can you tell us about that episode? Because as you're describing this whole, multifaceted way of life, my favorite Gloria Steinem quote, the politics is personal and personal is political, and they're so intertwined. And so I'm really amazed at how you include that, all of his lobbying and political efforts as well in all of your work. So can you tell us about what was recently happening in South Africa with hemp?
Yeah, I think just before I talk about that, just to lead into that, I think one of the things that I say on a regular basis is that what we must realize is that as an industry, we are at war. Okay, and we might not be in the trenches with machine guns, but we are fighting a war with big pharma, big alcohol, big tobacco, the cotton industry, the petrochemical industry. They are big behemoths who see this as a complete threat to their business model. So, when we talk about our Department of Health in South Africa, we're talking about big pharma. It's exactly the same in the States with the FDA, which I know is being ruffled amazingly at the moment, in my opinion. But we have the same thing here. So when I look at our Minister of Health, I'm like, who are they representing? They're not representing the people, because in 2019, we were voted the most unhealthy country in the world. We have an obesity crisis, we have a diabetes crisis, we have fast food all over the place at cheap prices from predominantly US brands. And so when our Minister of Health comes out with a statement like that, first of all, it's a completely uneducated statement with no scientific evidence to back his up whatsoever. Secondly, he went rogue and didn't consult anybody. So when he came out, most of government had never even heard of it, and he put it out there. So we rallied hard and we pulled together a webinar. First, we wrote a letter to the president, which we have some pretty good marketing channels. So and I got it straight into the president's office, and then we circulated it everywhere. And that encouraged other people to do the same, which was fantastic. And then we ran a webinar, and we got like 700 people on this webinar, and it went out live onto TV across the continent. And it was an hour and a half, and we had about 16, 17 people. The Minister of Health was supposed to come on and cancel just before and sent two of his people who were just completely hopeless. And then we had some other government officials on there. So it was a very high profile thing. And 2 weeks later, they withdrew. So we played a part. I'm not saying that it was just us, but we definitely helped catalyze and move it forward, and we're very proud of that. But we stood together as an industry, and that was good, because that's a big problem. I think unity in the industry is always a challenge, not just here, all over the place. People are fragmented and fractured while they're trying to figure out how to make money. But yeah, it brought the industry together, and it was a fantastic result, and it was an embarrassment for government. And if something like it happens again, we'll do the same again. We've had enough. We're just done. We're done with this rubbish. It's taking too long. So, but there is movement. There's positive movement. But we're just driving this industry forward. I don't care what government think anymore, to be honest. I just want everyone to open cannabis clubs, everyone to cultivate, to get on with it. Just do it properly, do it clean, and legislation must just catch up, because people need to eat. People need to survive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I would say that's a fantastic, everything you just said and all the successes, and congratulations on bringing everybody together to really be a part of that conversation. Now, it's very clear you're leading, the South African individuals and the people that are coming to the academy and coming from all over, and as well as with this political advocacy and being a real true advocate for the plant. But you also mentioned working for a few other, or with many other African countries across the continent, and really helping become, Africa coming together and uniting around this plant. Now, you spoke a little bit about strategic vision and sort of your hopes for that strategic look ahead. Where, from a leadership component, how do you think that South Africa, or the work that you've done, can help position other countries so that you can all move as that united front?
So it's complicated, because obviously, Africa is a continent with multiple countries. It's not like the States, although LA, New York are like different countries anyway. But we're separated by different languages. Like it's very diverse. What's happening at the moment is a lot of territories are starting to open up for hemp and medical. A lot of people won't touch recreational because they don't lose votes. So that's typical of most countries. But where the market is, for export, there's a massive opportunity for outdoor. I recently saw a US company that is actually taking landrace out of Africa and putting it into drinkables with Californian grapes. And I was just like, like, why aren't we doing that? It's a great idea. And I mean, we've thought about it, but why aren't we doing that? So I think there's a lot of cultural shifts that need to happen. One of the things we work very hard on is understanding the market. So the reality is there are two types of people that want to cultivate cannabis. There are people who want to cultivate cannabis for money, and most of that is for medicine. And there are people who want to cultivate cannabis because they love cultivating cannabis. From what I've been told in the States, the cannabis coming out of the recreational farms is superior to the cannabis coming out of the medical farms, because the guys in the recreational farms are deeply passionate about genetic strains. It's a deeply passionate thing, whereas in the commercial farms that are more pharmaceutically driven, it's agronomists, who are agronomists first. Cannabis is just another crop for them. And I think it's important to understand that there are two different sets of markets, and we've got to figure out the European market is going to be driven by big pharma for a long time. Cultivating for the cannabis clubs only in Germany makes no sense because the price is too high. Then your cheaper outdoor weed is still going to hit the streets. So I do believe there's a future for that market. But we have an office in Barcelona, and we're continually tapping in and coming over to figure out how it's going, and then coming back to the continent and going, right, guys, right now we won't build a medical facility unless it's indoor, because that's what the market demands. But what we do is we build a bigger facility that has enough processing capacity so that as the market shifts, we can go to outdoor or tunnels. But not in the beginning, because there's 85 licenses out here at the moment, and most people can't get their product out of the country. So we have to be driven by the market, but we also need to understand the trends and be involved in that narrative. I can tell you now that I will go to my grave fighting for outdoor sun-grown cannabis to be completely accepted in medicine, complementary medicine, and the recreational market, because it is the only way to really cultivate cannabis. I do believe in indoor. I believe there's a place for it. I think we've got the whole thing wrong. I think having recreational and medical is just completely ridiculous. We should have medical, we should have recreational, and in the middle, we should have complementary medicines that are not dictated by big pharma. I don't need to go to a doctor to get a prescription to try some cannabis to help for sleep. I don't need to follow that path. However, I need to go to a doctor if I want cannabis for cancer. And if I want cannabis for cancer, I want to make sure that it's 100% consistent. And then I think there's a space for indoor. But that's the top end. There's this whole market underneath, where I think it is being missed. So we're trying to drive that narrative.
Personally, Trenton, that's what I always think of as the wellness market. You're going there to help make your life better, but it doesn't have to be that super consistent pharmaceutical grade for when you're treating cancer or something similar. I very much hear you on that, and I hope we get there sometime soon.
Well, the thing is, we've got to just create the narrative. We've got to be outspoken about it. We've got to build this narrative, because we're fighting, big forces. Big pharma have deep pockets. They're trying with all their might to get a grip on this. But at the end of the day, it's really simple. It's economics. It's as simple as that. It's much cheaper to grow outdoors. So there has to be a market. Why am I going to pay 10 euros? I think it's come down a bit now, but an average of 10 euros a gram for something indoor when I can get something for a fraction of that's been grown outdoor and is just as good quality. This whole thing about indoor being better than outdoor is just ridiculous. It's not better. It's different, but it's not better.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, the wellness market that we'll kind of refer to it as in this conversation, that's the kind of thing where the conversation that you were having so much about the cannabis that's being grown in Africa is for export right now. It's been such a slog to open up domestic markets. And we're seeing something similar in South America too, where there's cannabis being cultivated to be exported predominantly to Europe for medical purposes. And there's a real lack of momentum in opening up domestic markets. The conversations are still continuing, they're still happening, but there's just hardly any momentum behind it. But I think if we could begin to switch the conversation with the regulators towards wellness, I think that would go a really long way, because a lot of us in the industry will talk about the problematic term of recreational use. you know, is it recreational use? Is it adult use? It's adults making decisions on what they're going to put in their body. And for so many people when it comes to cannabis, it's a wellness purpose to consume.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a category that's just not being spoken about, you know.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, don't get me wrong. I'm very pro legislation and regulation. This is something that people consume. You know, we've seen what happened in our food industry. It's a disgrace, actually. I think the
Yeah.
food industry should be tried for genocide. You know, people have been poisoning people all over the world for decades and getting away with it. You know, so I'm very militant about trying to make sure that cannabis is clean. So, but to keep it clean, you have to have regulation. You have to have testing. We can't just have people cultivating stuff in their garage and using chemicals and putting that into the
Right.
system. So there must be regulation, but it must be fair regulation, and it must be well thought through. You know,
Right.
otherwise, the thing is, if you over legislate, then the illicit market just continues. Look what happened in California. You know?
Exactly. And I know that these exact topics are going to be a huge part of the conversation that you'll have at the Cheeba Cannabis in Africa Summit that's happening at the end of May. So will you tell us a little bit about what's going on with that event?
Yeah, so it's called the Cheeba Cannabis and Hemp Summit. We always add hemp in. I have my opinions on whether there should be hemp or cannabis or sort of one plant. You know, and as you say, if it gets divided post farm gate, you know, then it gets decided. Okay, it's industrial hemp, because this toll, we're about to go to 2.2% in South Africa, but it's just like, why is it 2%? Why is it not
Yeah,
5%? Why is it not 8%? All the
right.
condo land cannabis. We've been cultivating hundreds and thousands of hectares of outdoor low THC land race. That's not cannabis and it's not hemp because it doesn't fit into either category. It's like,
Right.
anyway.
The whole idea, like there's a bigger conversation happening to provide context of where and what point is the cannabis plant regulated, and more folks are talking. You know, Stephanie and I were just at the ICBC event. This was a topic, ICBC Berlin. This was a topic of people just discussing that should cannabis be related as, you know, grown as an agricultural plant, and then the regulation kind of ends there, and then pick back up the regulation for the end product, you know, what's it being used for, the cannabinoids, things like that. So that's kind of a big debate that's happening, and I'm sure that's also a conversation that'll be happening at the summit.
Absolutely. I mean, so our cultivation is now moving across to the agricultural department, even medical. It hasn't happened yet, but anyway, that's the word on the street, and I'm going to say it so that it happens. But ultimately, you have, you know, SAPRA, who are a regulator, signing off GMP cultivation part. They should be doing the processing part, but not the cultivation part. So we're going to be discussing all those kind of topics. I mean, we've also working very closely with the International Cannabis Symposium, which is focused on regulation and legal. And so we've got a great working relationship with them. It takes place within the Cannabis Expo. It's a separate event, but it's also in collaboration with the Expo, which has been going for many years. So we've really brought the B2B side into the Expo, and we've been working with them for a number of years. And there are people coming from obviously across the continent, and we are building this out as the sort of go-to event for the African continent, and you know, certainly open to as many internationals coming down as possible. You know, we're open for business. We really are. We want to work. We want to sell weed. To be blunt.
Brilliant, brilliant. Give us, we'll put this in the show notes, but give us the website. Where can people find more information about the event?
So just our general website, in case it's easy, is cheebaafrica.com. The summit is cheebasummit.com. But everything can be found through the Cheeba Africa website.
Okay, that's great. And then we also mentioned the International Cannabis Symposium, and I believe that's organized by ICQSA, which is also run by a GCNC member, Atia Farouz, and it has a lot of activity from a lot of our members there. So yeah, if anybody out there listening wants to head over to South Africa, there's going to be a lot of really great people there at the May 30th, right? That's the date.
Yeah, to 30th and 31st. So the symposium's on the Friday, and then we're on the Friday and Saturday. Expos for 3 days. But yeah, we have hotel partners. It's going to be an amazing event. You know, there wasn't one in Johannesburg last year, so there's a lot of people coming to this event, and I think this is going to really help catalyze and drive the industry to the next level. You know, there's a lot of government people coming down as well, which is very encouraging. We've got some, you know, high-profile government speakers as well. So The government are taking it seriously. We just need to be a bit more organized and hurry up.
Yep, just keep pressing. Just keep pressing, pressing for that pressure, applying the pressure. I think as we're winding down with our time now, Stephanie, will you, ask Trenton about some of our final little topics? We love to end our episode with this.
Absolutely. Well, this has been such an inspiring conversation. And Trenton, I just want to acknowledge that you really look at the holistic human side of this industry, the people part, which is what we say at our company. And I really want to commend you for not only teaching about the plant and helping people to develop and become those future leaders and knowledge, base holders of the industry, but also that you look at them as a whole human and you encourage them to take care of themselves and to actually take care of themselves as they grow so that the plants grow stronger because they're stronger. So I really, really, really want to commend that as well. It's something we don't talk about enough in our industry is the wellness of our people. And I hope as the industry matures, things like my background, I have a degree in workplace wellness and health promotion. And so how do we build this into, how do we encourage people to take care of themselves from a physical and mental and emotional, spiritual perspective? So I really want to respect what you're doing there. And I'm excited to hear how the summit goes on your end. And as Jill and I mentioned, we're always wrapping up these particular conversations with our ask of people. And so we'll ask today, let us know one of your big wins. I know we just talked about the summit, so maybe it's that future win. And then what is a wish you have for the industry that, by the end of the year or in the near future, we're able to see and come to fruition?
So I think the biggest win we've had recently is in November, we were actually awarded our higher education accreditation by our Council of Higher Education. It was and I'll just say it how it is, it was one of the most painful experiences of my life. It took 4 years. Just a very sad example of the inefficiency of our government departments, but we got it. We still haven't, it's in the market. We haven't started yet because there's a few other bureaucratic things that we're dealing with. So it's still, we've got hundreds of people who have applied for this course and still can't start. But it was a big win to get that over the line, and there's nothing like it. There's nothing accredited. So it's a 1-year high certificate. Obviously now gives us the opportunity to bring in degrees, and so we're an accredited institution. So that was definitely a win. In terms of the industry, let's keep it real, guys. Let's keep it real. That's my main thing. I know there's a lot of we call them, I don't know if it's an international word, Spengalis, people who are just opportunists looking to make cash. But this is a teacher plant. Let's not forget that. It's a very holistic plant. It has a spiritual aspect to it, whether you're spiritual or not. It is a survivor. It is a thriver. And it also is an equalizer, and I think we need to understand and enhance that, because cannabis can really, really benefit your life in so many amazing ways from a health and wellness perspective, but it can also just make you a lazy, useless stoner, and so we need to teach people to harness the power of the plant and to help it make people better as people. We're in a massive global crisis at the moment, and I always say if you took alcohol and threw it out the window and replaced it with cannabis, I can guarantee without a doubt the world will be a much better place, without a doubt. So yeah, just work together and build this into a beautiful industry for everybody.
Hear, hear. That is such a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much for that, Trenton. And I think I'm going to go off into my day feeling a lot more inspired, as I always am when I talk about cannabis. Honestly, it's just incredible. To your point, it really gets us in touch with ourselves and does some beautiful things for the world. And I think our conversation today was just absolutely beautiful. So thank you again, Trenton. And where can people reach you? Do you want to connect on LinkedIn? Can you let us know your website one more time?
Yeah, CheebaAfrica.com or LinkedIn, just Trenton Birch.
Brilliant.
And I just want to take a moment to also big you up for guys for doing this, and also the GCNC. I'm very privileged and proud to be part and involved in the organization that really has the cannabis plant at its heart and connecting people who really believe that this can change the world. It can, it is, and it can, and it will. So thank you for the invitation. I'm very proud to be part of this.
I appreciate that so much. We are all about just trying to help all of our members, make their missions happen and make their reality happen as folks work to connect people with the plant. So that's the way that we contribute through the GCNC. And Stephanie, thank you so much for being here today to co-host. We appreciate all the work that you're doing with Lane Recruitment. It's amazing. We appreciate you so much.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I really feel inspired as well. And just thank you both for the work you do. And as you said, we're all building the future and we're all here because we believe in the power of the plant. So thank you for all you do, Trenton. I'm excited to hear as you grow. And yeah, thank you for a wonderful conversation today.
Oh, and you do realize that if you're not at the summit next year, we won't be speaking. There's your invitation.
Yes. Well, I used to live in South Africa, so it's easy to get me back. But
there we go. Good.
Yeah, so I will be there. Yeah,
all right, I'm putting it in my plans for next year. Can't wait. All right, thank you both, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Yeah, thanks. Ciao.